British Prime Minister Theresa May says she wants the UK to continue having access to the EU's single market for 2 years after it leaves the bloc. May was speaking in Florence in Italy in a bid to reboot Brexit talks that have reached an impasse. The negotiations are due to restart next week.
A period of implementation would be in our mutual interest. And that is why I am proposing that there should be such a period after the UK leaves the EU. Clearly, people, businesses and public services should only have to plan for one set of changes in the relationship between the UK and the EU. So during the implementation period, access to one another's markets should continue on current terms, and Britain should also continue to take part in existing security measures. As of today, these considerations point to an implementation period of around 2 years. Still, I do not want our partners to fear that they will need to pay more or receive less over the remainder of the current budget plan as a result of our decision to leave. The UK will honour commitments we have made during the period of our membership.
For more on this, I'm joined by economist Vicky Pryce, who's in London. Vicky is a board member at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. Vicky, great to have you on Money Talks, as always. Vicky, what stood out for you in Theresa May's speech?
The one thing that did stand out is the fact that there wasn't a huge amount of detail, particularly about the divorce bill. She did say that, of course, we'll honour our commitments. What people interpret that to mean is that we'll still pay into the budget for the next couple of years anyway, and certainly during the transition period, which will be another 2 years. Interesting, again, that she referred to it as implementation. One wonders what implementation to what, since we have no idea where we might end up at the end of all this. But she didn't actually specify some of the sort of figures that could be added to just paying every year, the usual 8 billion that we do pay net. In other words, longer projects, pensions, etc., which obviously are going to be a very important part of the negotiating process before we can move to talk about trade. The other thing that was really quite interesting is that she's basically conceded practically everything that the Europeans have wanted. We have to get all these things out of the way before we can start talking about trade. She's conceded about EU citizens in the sense that they will still be allowed to move freely over the 2-year transition period, let's call it that, but just having to register, that we will abide by ECJ, European Court of Justice, laws and jurisdiction during that period, which is not going to please lots of the Brexiters, that basically will remain in the customs union and the single market over that period as well. And who knows how much longer that will be the case, because, of course, we'll have another election at some point. So we have nothing really seriously to offer the Europeans. What's happened so far? We have taken everything that we think they will accept and offered that to them.
So this speech was supposed to kind of kickstart these talks and push through the impasse that we've had. Do you think it is going to achieve that as the talks get back underway in a couple of weeks' time?
Well, the interesting thing is that we've now made it very clear we want a transition period. And I think that's something which was already sort of contemplated by the Europeans. We hadn't asked for it properly before. We have now. And that, of course, relieves some of the tension, if you like, since it's going to take considerably longer before we get to the end point. So that's good news. It means that we can start talking about various things and push them forward.
Right. OK, Vicky, don't go away. We're just going to change gears a little bit for now, because banks in the UK have been asked to carry out immigration checks on some 70 million current account holders from January, and that is to see if they are living legally in the UK. The Home Office says 6,000 people are overstaying their visas. Failed asylum seekers and foreign national offenders could be deported in the first year of the checks. Now, the accounts of those identified will be blocked or frozen. So, Vicky, that is quite an interesting development from the UK's banking authorities. And now, doesn't this put the banks in a particularly difficult position, because they have a duty, their primary duty, I suppose, is to protect their deposit holders, isn't it?
It is going to be a problem for them because, of course, there are so many current account and other account holders around, and it will add considerably to banks' administrative costs. And of course, you know, there are cases, quite often it happens, that for business reasons or other reasons, banks either don't open an account that you'd like them to open for you, or they close it down. Very often they don't tell you why, of course. This is more of a clampdown on what people who have come here, perhaps maybe money laundering and so on, which the banks have already been aware of, but now they are going to be the ones responsible for doing it on behalf of the government. I think that reminds one, given that we were talking about Brexit just now, that again in an earlier paper that was leaked, that the government had produced, we don't know exactly who leaked it and for what reason, there was again the suggestion that it is the businesses that are going to be responsible for checking whether the people they employ have the right papers, whether they're legal, do they have a right to work, have they overstayed their welcome. So what is going on, it seems to me, is that it's being passed on to businesses, which is an extra cost for everybody, but you can understand why it's being done, but actually it does sound a bit draconian.
Absolutely, at a particularly difficult time for the banks during Brexit as well. Vicky Pryce, economist in London, thank you ever so much.